All right, big dog, welcome to the show, man. I'm excited to map out all sorts of health and wellness and just turning myself into the ultimate 40-year-old machine with you today, bro. It's going to be epic.
I love it, man. Thanks for having me on. This is a long time coming.
Yeah, we're super excited for some of the things we're doing with you guys over at Elevation. We met each other, well, I know where we met. We met at a speaking class that we both took out in Orange County in California. But when was that, man? Like time flies. I think it was was that 2 years ago?
Two, about 2 years ago. Almost 2.5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy, man. That was back when we didn't know how to talk in front of people. Now we're like masters.
We're ever evolving, but yeah, no, that was a great boot camp. I mean, we learned both, I think, so much. You gave me some great pointers back in the day, I remember, and that was well before like you even knew everything that we were doing. But that was a really really fun time of life, especially when we were just getting started, trying to assimilate all the things that we were doing together. And man, 2.5 years flies.
I know it's crazy, dude. It's almost scary. I mean, I shouldn't say almost. It absolutely is scary.
It is.
It's
It
very
is.
frightening. Speaking of time flying, I'm turning
Yeah.
40 this year. I'm getting ready to kick off my last summer shred in my 30s, which is, it's like kind of weird. I promised myself I wouldn't think too much about it. And I find myself thinking about it all the time now. Not from oh my gosh, I'm getting old standpoint, but just like, wow, time really flies by. I remember, it feels like it was yesterday where I just wanted to be 13 years old. Like I thought that was like the coolest thing ever, man. I'm 13. I'm a grown man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I'm 40, and I wouldn't say I want to go back in time and change anything. It would just be kind of cool to experience being a 13-year-old again, so I can appreciate what I have now even more. But I think the big theme, and I'm sure a lot of guys can relate because I know they can. I talk to them every day. I talk to people who are entering what they consider to be the next chapter, and they're trying to close a chapter on maybe some poor health practices, not taking care of the inner workings of this crazy miracle we call the body. And they want to
Yeah.
get serious, about their health. And I'm definitely someone who is always trying to get better. I love fitness. It's my life. It's my lifestyle. It's my business. It's everything. But it's a lot to take care of, and I know what you guys have going on at Elevation is really changing the game. And we're super pumped to partner with you guys. But today I was hoping we could really just dive into how to maximize and really take care of our health as we're getting older. What are the things we need to be worried about? What are the different buckets we need to be filling? I know
Yeah.
TRT is a huge topic, right? Peptides, huge topic, but like I know that's so much
Yep.
more than that, right? It's so much
Yeah.
more than that. So I guess the big question is, where do we start? Like, where do we start with this whole health thing?
I love it, man. Such a good question. So, where do you start is probably the right question, and I'm going to just kind of reframe it a little bit more. But like, where does Josiah start, right? So that's the first level of like my response to anybody is start interjecting yourself, like you as the individual, in the equation. So much of this conversation is getting inundated with just noise. Like there's so much information out here these days. People talking, voicing opinions, right? So if you're the receiver of that, you're just hearing a bunch of things and not enough people are going, okay, what of these things is right for me? So that's the first piece is interject yourself into the equation. Stop looking at the equation as some external piece away from you that's going to like act upon you. Like you have to insert yourself into this portion and into this formula. So that's the first part. The second part is reframing what is health. So most people don't really like they won't sit down and say, what does health mean for like just in general, speaking. And it's taken me a long time. So my background in acute medicine, I spent the last 12 years with some of the brightest individuals on earth in oncology, regenerative orthopedics, interventional radiology, cancer genomics, doing specialized treatments when people get to a place, right? You tear, performance medicine, you tear your ACL. How do you take this elite athlete, get them back fast, but also hopefully better when they step back on the court, the field, et cetera, with, new technologies, new protocols and how you do the surgeries or not do the surgeries to things like, You have a cardiac event. How do you fix this person without doing a direct cut into the body approach? How can you access it through veins and arterial lines through the body? Things like that. If you have cancer, how do you deliver certain cancer treatments in a way that's going to be specialized to this particular cancer? Do you do something that's directly beamed to them, or do you enter the arterial line again and deliver certain types of radiative therapies and things like that? The nuances of acute medicine are so deep and vast, but it's when you get to a stage based point in your life where you have to treat something. So after inserting yourself as part of the equation, you need to start thinking to yourself how to, this whole model of acute medicine has been driven off of this modeling of what's called insurance-based healthcare. So insurance is something just in that word is like, what do these words mean, right? So the first question was like, what does health mean? So insurance-based healthcare is based around, generally speaking, I'm insured if something goes wrong. So that's the framework. If this happens, then this will treat it, right? You get in a car accident, you want insurance. You want that system to come save your lives, the people that you love lives, and we're all safe and healthy, by the way. Anyone listening to this, you and I are on this call too. But if someone's going to get taken from that car accident and get taken to the hospital system, you want the best to be working on you in a fast, effective, very comprehensive manner to save your life, right? That's insurance-based medicine. But what I like to flip the script on, again, back to what is health, is we don't think about it. We're not inundated in the United States to even think this way. But what is assurance? Assurance-based healthcare. Assurance meaning I am assured by the lifestyle I'm living that my health long-term is going to be effective. Insurance is reactive. Get in a car accident, want this system to take care of me. Assurance is I'm doing these things to assure that I'm not going to end up in the grave, shorter than I should. So that's the first piece. Flip from an insurance-based system to an assurance-based system. And that's what we do at Elevation. That's one piece of it. But then it's define health. Like, what does health even mean? So some of the things that you guys do extremely well at the True Transformation, and it's why we're partnered with you guys as well, is that so much of assurance-based medicine is based around the lifestyle decisions that we take in and deposit in every single day. So the way that we talk about health is two macro frameworks with subcategories. The first is the psychological experience that we live throughout this experience on life. The other is the physiological experience that we live through this life. That's this meat suit here. But both of them are interconnected and married and not separate from the other. The way that you look and you take on trauma or life events can affect your physiology, but vice versa. And so it's helping people understand that it's one in the whole, and not separate from each other. So that's the first part. If you're thinking about my health after inserting yourself into the equation, how am I taking on life through this psychological experience? And then how am I taking on this life through the physiological experience? Well, that's where elevation and the True Transformation, work hand in hand with people to get this part of it dialed in that can help this part dramatically. And when we subcategorize the physiological experience, the things that move the needle on the four horsemen of death, which is, neurodegenerative disease, cardiovascular failure, metabolic syndrome, and other types of, mitochondrial issues that can lead to major events later in life, are as follows. Irrefutably, it's social connections is the first thing. So the quality of the environment that we have, from our spouses or our partners to our friendships to our communities. That's why I commend, and I work with only in partnership with people that have phenomenal communities like the True Transformation, is because it's a part of this equation. It is not woo-woo stuff. It's not like some weird thing that you're seeing on social media. It is a true element of health that's going to maximize your life now and in the future. It's proven. It's clinical science. It's proven that it will extend your life and the quality of that life. So that's the first part. The second piece is sleep. So if people aren't taking sleep seriously or augmenting sleep, they're doing themselves a disservice. That is literally, I know we at Elevation and people in our community, we try to stay away from magic bullets as much as we can and saying this thing is like the fountain of youth, like just do this thing, right? Yeah. But honestly speaking, if you maximize the quality and quantity and the effectiveness of your sleep, it is the closest thing to a magic pill that exists. Okay. So that's why it's number two next to social connections. After that, it's nutrition, and nutrition is a very nuanced thing and has tons of details in it. It's why you guys are great at what you do. It's why we collaborate in the clinical, things that we do with you guys. It's very important, but I won't go into hyper detail with that. And then the last thing is exercise. I love how you guys talk about it with movement and movement categories. It's beautiful because clinically speaking, the two categories in exercise that have to happen for somebody to maximize what is called their health span, that is a right now, the quality of the right now, and the longevity of that life. How long can you live at this quality? These two categories are cardiorespiratory exercise and anaerobic exercise. So the strength training elements, the performance elements with power and power output. Those two categories are clinically proven to extend life now, the quality as well as the length of life. And if you get into some of the things that are really scary, I love throwing up these statistics because it brings in kind of a level setting of where people should think about themselves in the equation. Again, back, how do I insert myself back into the equation? Part of this is we think of things that like are harmful to us, right? What are all these bad things, that I'm hearing from this guy and this, influencer on social media? It's like, if you drink alcohol, it's terrible for you. I'm not saying it's good for you. I'm not saying that at all. It is categorically not going to be a net positive for you if you drink alcohol. I'm not denying that. But we're hearing things like, don't smoke, right? It's going to kill you. Don't drink. It's going to kill you. But what we don't talk about enough is what's the risk score on not exercising? The risk score of smoking is a 20% increase risk of all-cause mortality, 40% risk of all-cause mortality. Like these increases of my risk in the equation, if I do this activity, my risk of dying earlier or faster than I want to goes up, right? We all kind of intuitively know that. But the power of what I'm about to say is pretty dramatic. You have a 400% increase of all-cause mortality if you do not strength train. That is a catastrophic punch in the face. So what I want people to understand, and it's why we flip the script on the game, is that when we talk about clinical efficacy and all the analytics that we do, and we can talk about it, through this podcast, all these things that we're doing, we're trying to uncover things for people. But there's an applied, assurance policy in you in the equation now that you have to start doing, which is you have to start doing these lifestyle changes for yourself to increase your quality of life now and the extension of that life thereof. And so that's why, when we get into these things like exercise, it's not something where you just go walk around the block and, you pick up a 10-pound weight or you go do your fit Pilates class with your girls on a weekend once in a while. Like that is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about that's clinically proven. It's not just some guy. It's clinically proven that's going to make your life better now and in the future is adhering to these types of things of cardiorespiratory output and adhering to strength training. And luckily, there's enough people talking about it where I think the paradigm's starting to shift. But I really want people to be empowered, going back to the psychology and the physiology portion of this. The one thing on psychology when we talk about the social connections that I really want people to understand, and I love it, it's part of your whole element with the true transformation too, is really the identity of yourself in this whole equation. So that social connection with self outside of everyone else, but that social connection with self in reestablishing who I am is I'm this person that does these things now. When you start like living life like that, then you start wanting more and more and more of the things that are going to make your life better now, and in the future. So really long kind of intro to kind of these pieces of it, but I think it's an important kickoff for people to really understand that no magic pill exists. It's just going to act on you and make you this magical, new person that's going to live till 300 years old because you just took some random vitamin. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. You have to insert yourself into this equation.
100%. First of all, I've actually never heard it put so well and seamlessly. And how you just piece all that together is exactly how we've built our program, right? So like I should pay you for the infomercial you just gave because I'm gonna steal all that. But it's so crazy that we always talk about what not to do, right? Like everybody knows, like there was a whole joke I actually used to give a talk on, believe it or not, years ago. Whenever I'd get people together, I'd say, if I went around this room and I had two foods in my hands, I had broccoli or an apple or whatever, like something healthy in one hand, and a donut in the other hand. Everybody in this room would be able to tell me which is the healthier option, right? Because we've all been trained like, don't eat the donuts, don't eat this, or don't smoke cigarettes, or don't drink alcohol, it's going to kill you. But we don't talk enough about what you should be doing and should be including in your life that, like the statistics show, that 400% all cause mortality increase from not working out and not moving enough is absolutely insane versus whatever the 20-40% it was from smoking. And I'm sure the statistics get even deeper when it comes to those who do partake in all these healthy things, who might dabble in some of the unhealthy stuff. The result, or at least the negative consequences, aren't as high because you're so in tune with all these other things you're doing, right? The conversation has to shift. And I think that that's really a well put way of defining health. It's not just like, well, I'm going to live a long time, right? Or,
Right.
or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to, be stuck in a wheelchair or like stuck on the couch or whatever. There's so much more to it. The community aspect, man, like that is huge. I'm coming off of a live event about a week ago where we had, 100 clients come in and hang out together for 3 days. And the amount of health that gets, addressed and improved in those 3 days is outstanding. You see people literally transform in front of you from an introverted, can't talk, doesn't want to participate, to someone who's laughing and happy and like signing up for other fitness events after that event. It works, right? And it's a part of health that doesn't get talked about enough. So I say all that to say, that all makes tons of sense. I think what a lot of people struggle with is they know, okay, Brad, I know I got to work out. I'm doing that, right? I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to start tracking my protein, getting enough calories, whatever. I'm going to start walking my dogs twice a day instead of once a day. Like I got a good 3M system, as we call it, movement muscle meals. Great, cool. But man, like I know there's more, like I see
Hmm.
all these guys, on the internet talking about their hormones, peptides, talking about their
Yep.
supplements, talking about their sleep protocols, like all this crazy stuff. And I got the means to take care of myself. Where do I start with that stuff? Like, how do we break
Yeah.
down becoming the fully optimized, fully, checking all the boxes? Like, okay, if God takes me home early, cool, but it's not going to be because of my negligence, right? It's not going to be because I missed out on, tools and resources that were there. I'm gonna cover all my bases. Where do I start?
Such a good leeway too into this portion of it. So this is where we're different too, and when this gets released, I'll be interested to see what the kind of the responses are from different communities because I know you got a good outreach too. What's really interesting, and I'm going to frame it like this because probably no one's ever really talked about it in this framework. A lot of the times when we talk about medicine, right, or clinical anything, we're talking about it from the stance of general population groups. So when we study something like, hey, is this whatever effective? I don't care what it is, but it could be a medical device or it could be a pharmaceutical or it could be a supplement, whatever. When we're measuring efficacy of something, we're doing it off of cohort groups of people. So we're categorizing people. We're actually saying, hey, we're going to take this group of people and then we're going to separate them. We're going to put this group of people on the whatever and look at the whatever. They won't know it. And then we're going to put this group of people not on it. They won't know it. They'll think that they're on it too. And then we're going to measure things. That way that we've created a situation in which there's no bias, right? There's no like preset unconscious, kind of thing like that's in play. And then we measure it over time. We say, hey, there's a clinical statistical difference in this group versus this group. That's effective. So therefore, we're going to use it. Okay, so that's how all of medicine is really framed up. Which these, and you hear Lane Norton
Mm.
human cohort, studies. Like, I forget how he always says it, but he's got this thing that he like loves to hit on. And that's one side of the fence, which I adhere to, and you have to take it if you take clinical medicine seriously. But there's another side of the fence that is not really talked about enough, that's kind of like fringe to this group, which is the power of the placebo itself, which is they study these things and then they find out that, like, hey, this group over here actually got better than this group. One of the best examples of this is there was a clinical study on knee arthroscopy, meaning they put in a camera into the knee and they did a certain procedure. They were taking out parts of loose fragments and things like that. But what they ended up doing is they ended up taking this group of people and saying, hey, we're going to go into your knee and we're going to do surgery. And this group of people, hey, we're going to go into your knee and do surgery. Except for they didn't. They cut their knee, they stitched it. They didn't enter the knee though. So here's what they found. This group of people actually did better than this group. And what was dramatic about this is that in orthopedics, there's a lot of good work that's done over here. But what it really highlighted, is my point in all this, is that the power of the mind. That's why when I say health, it's psychological experience and physiological experience, because they're irrefutably tied together. This placebo effect is very powerful. So when you talked, and I don't mean to not answer a question, I'm making a point of this, is when you talked about like this event you just had and the momentum build of these people, and now those people are signing up for things. That's the power of belief. That's the power of belief medicine that's not talked about enough. Okay. So I frame it like this on purpose, is because we have an epidemic right now, in my opinion. You can see it on TikTok, you can see it on social media, of people talking about general advice with things like testosterone, peptides, and things like that. They're painting them as a thing that does this. Therefore, if you're a person that thinks that end result is good, you should take it. That's literally the framework. And I would argue anyone that say, no, I'm not talking about it like this. Anybody that's selling peptides on TikTok right now into their research peptide, whatever, that's all that they're talking about. If you want to lose belly flat, tesamorelin is the thing you should take. That's literally their sales pitch.
Yeah.
Because it's got an amino chain structure that blah, 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 blah. Cool. What I want people to understand is that this whole idea of my belief system of now that there's a thing that exists that's going to heal me is a part of the equation as well. But what people don't do right now, and this is where we really insert ourselves and we stand on this hill, is no one's measuring the efficacy of this at all. They're just taking a bunch of shit, pumping it into their bloodstream because they heard a dude talk about it. They have no real way of measuring anything other than how do I feel. Can you see how there's a problem now in that equation? Now that I brought up placebo and kind of, they don't know how to measure this. So let me go back to what we do different. We start from a framework of not pushing products. We know the tools that exist. The tools exist for a reason. They're very good because certain things reactively change a biological process. You insert this, it's going to change the structure formation of this biological pathway. The problem is that no one's going, okay, what are the leading, lagging, and current indicators of my health? When I started this thing and I said, insert yourself into the equation, when you're listening to dude on TikTok, they're not even inserting themselves in the equation. They're talking about all of us together as this like cesspool of like all humans do really well on this peptide.
Yeah.
You get what I'm talking about?
Right.
So when you step back and you take an honest approach of what we're trying to do, of having, okay, if Josiah's here, we want to measure what are, you say, hey, I want to get in the best shape, health, my life. All the things that we talked about 1 through 4, right? The true transformation actually does them really well. It's why we're partnered with you.
Right.
But now you want to go, okay, now what's under the hood? What's under my machine? If I'm like a performance engine, when COVID hit, everyone got fascinated with the F1 show on Netflix, including myself.
Yeah.
But it's a really good representation of this. What's the difference between F1 and NASCAR? Well, NASCAR, they just go like this around in a circle and they're performance engines, but to an extent. F1, if you look at all that, I mean, those engineering teams are like tinkering with minute details from the engine to the steering dynamics, all of that. So when we look at an individual, we're trying to take the same approach. First of all, we're throwing a foundational level on its head. Most people say, hey, let's do blood work. It's a very common conversation right now. Everybody's talking about blood work. Literally every single one of our competitors in just that category of blood work is talking about blood work. Okay, we're all in agreement that blood work's an avenue of seeing some things, right? Problem is what how much of those things is an actual reflection window on myself?
Mm.
No one's really answering that question. You've got some companies that are like, hey, extensive blood work. You have other people that are saying, and in the acute medicine space, staunch, deniers of what my stance is, saying, looking at too many biomarkers is inherently bad because biologically there can be inflated things. Therefore, why would I, cause unneeded anxiety for myself, right? So you have these spectrums of voices. Some people looking at 17 biomarkers that they inflate and say they're really 50. They're not, they're 17. Then you have your family practice in the acute system. You go have your once a year physical, 14 maybe biomarkers, maybe 20, telling you, hey, you're good, right? There's misses in all this because it's an insurance model. We're ensuring that there's no problems right this second, but there's no assurance that there's something coming or there's a lagging indicator of something or what was happening from the moment I was born. What makes me individual? Because again, we're not inserting myself in this. We're taking general, hey, Josiah is a 40-plus-year-old male adult, and in his category of people, this is the reference range. We're not talking about anything of assurance, just ensuring that Josiah is not going to end up with the oncologist, three stories above, right, in the building, kind of
Right.
thing. Does that make sense? You tracking what I'm saying?
100%. 100%.
So when we look at biomarkers, we're trying to extend the panel as much as we can because we want to assure that this snapshot for these last 3 months are giving us enough of the indication that we can correlate to the other things that we're looking at elevation. The things that really matter are when going back to the F1 thing, people don't even understand what is my physiological machine. I got obsessed with this. Let me tell you why too. For a moment in time, I was working for a genomics breast cancer company. It's one of the best in the world, based out of the Netherlands. And what they did is they would essentially sequence out. These women would be diagnosed with breast cancer. It's a terrible disease, kills so many people. And when they were diagnosed, it's a grueling event for the people in their lives, for themselves. It's just terrible for the oncologists trying to deal with it because it's so heavy. It's life and death situations. And what the company I worked for, what they would do is they would take that sample tissue that is cancer, they would spin it out, and they'd be able to deduce and say, there's 4 different things that are driving this cancer growth. They'd be able to tell you what those sections were. What does that do? Well, that tells us that we have to do this type of treatment algorithm for this group, this type of treatment algorithm for this group, this type of treatment algorithm for this group, etc. So then we can avoid things like radiation therapy or chemotherapy or combinations because that cancer that's growing is not going to result well to this treatment. You follow me?
Yeah.
So we could save, this woman who's going to be fighting this battle, this hard battle. We could essentially say, your cancer, for your breast cancer version, you don't need chemotherapy in conjunction with your oncologist. We need to double down on these treatments and avoid that unnecessary traumatic. It's heavy on the body and it's very hard to process. My mother's a breast cancer survivor. I know this stuff intimately. That's powerful information, right? If you were to understand that, if you're a breast cancer person. And I really, I'll send you the link. You can put the link in this. I would love for people to be aware of this. I don't have any association with the company anymore other than I love what they were doing. That's why I worked for them for the time I did. And they're doing great work still to this day. So you can hyperlink, and women, if you're, in this category of breast cancer, you should be talking to your oncologist about this type of things. But my questions at those times were always like, this is such powerful information. This is insurance. Like, we're talking about the insurance acute care model. I have breast cancer. How do we treat this? My question was always like, how do we leverage this technology from the front end?
Mm.
How do we leverage this for myself in the ways that we understand now? Clinically, science is evolving and changing, but for what we know now, how do we do that? And so I was obsessed with finding out who had the right type of technology that could do this type of thing. So we partnered with those people. Fast forward 3 years, we do that. But now we can understand, okay, of the 20,000 genes that exist in the human body, we're looking at 200 million different variations of genomes, types of variations. We're understanding heterozygous and homozygous situations, meaning mom gives us one piece of a bad part of the gene and dad doesn't, or mom and dad both give us bad parts of the genes. And what are the actual downstream effects of all this, right? That's understanding you as an F1 race car. That's you understanding what's my gear shift? What's my gear shift? What's my steering dynamics? What are my wheel turn axle ratios? What is the front, fin dynamics? What's my power to weight ratio? All these things, because that's me inserting myself in the assurance situation, not the insurance situation, reactive. Now I know how my body operates. So now I know, okay, when I'm subscribed to the 3M methodology, when I'm subscribed and I'm trusting Josiah and I'm listening to his lifestyle adaptations and I'm bought in, I'm totally transformed in this person, which you guys kill it at, into this person that believes it. What's next? This is what's next. This is when you go, ooh, it's really easy for me to buy into those calorie macros, which 100% is clinical science. Lane Norton, don't kill me. Like thermodynamics, it doesn't go away. Calories in, calories out matter. But now we're talking about what types of forms of carbohydrates, macros, what forms of fats, what forms of proteins, what forms of these calories for me, inserting myself in assurance, are going to, one, give me the best output for right this second, but also not set me up for failure down the line for longevity. Because now what we're talking about is a U curve. So if anyone, Peter Tia does a really good job at this, explaining the U curve methodology. There's nuance to the health span and longevity conversation. I omit that, or I admit that too. I try not to be too dogmatic on those conversations. They are good parameters to talk about, but there's a lot of nuance to this. There's no real strong grounding because it's continuously evolving. But the U curve is something that's an easy conversation to have with people when we start applying lagging and leading indicators and right now indicators all into one. We start going, so there's there's imaginary U right here. If on this side of the fence of the U is something that's really bad for me, this is just a Brad conversation right this second. And this side is like way too much of the thing, and it's now bad for me over here. These are two bad points of the U. How do I get right into that sweet spot, which is like right in the middle? That's the conversation that we're playing at Elevation. This is why a $200 a month TRT clinic thing doesn't yield this type of conversation. It's not even in their thought process because they're just trying to give you testosterone. What we're trying to do is we're trying to go, in you, Brad, how does testosterone fit into your U curve for endocrinology and overall your F1 race car, if you will, use the analogy again. And at what dosing does that yield the best return on this U curve? And that's where people miss. And that's where, again, back to this like cesspool of like general advice, people are saying pump peptides, pump testosterone. At what dose? Well, my homie over at the gym says 250 milligrams. My homie over here, here says 100 milligrams. I don't know. This guy I'm listening to on the internet has a dosing chart. He's not even a clinician, and he's telling me to take this many micrograms of a thing. I don't know how to measure this. I don't know where it is on the U curve for me, right?
Sure.
And so that's where, I'm not bashing peptides. We use them all the time. We use them every day. We use, other forms of peptide variations too all the time. We use TRT a lot with a lot of different people that require it. But the conversation should be measured, and it should be measured in understanding where you are on the youth curve as much as possible. And that's why our conversations with our clinicians are conversations in detail and not what are commonly kind of becoming the thing now, which is a clearance conversation to give you a product.
Mm.
So really long-winded way to hopefully to answer part of the question on like peptides and where do you start. The advice, let me summarize this. So like where would you start with peptides? Where would you start with testosterone? My advice, and you don't have to use elevation, but if you're going to take this seriously, you want to know that the person understands what the tool is first and foremost. Like what is this tool? What is it going to do? And then you want to understand how is this going to yield what result for you and why.
Mm.
It if it's just like, hey, this creates great recovery. This is a great recovery peptide. There's a lot of different category or peptides in that category. For example, I want a recovery peptide. Okay, well, how is it helping you recover? What what is the biological process in which this thing is helping you recover?
Mm.
Like understand that. And if your clinician can't support you in that conversation, then that's kind of a negative thing. Is like if they can't describe how this thing is going to help the specifically the situation of recovery, then that's a frontline kind of question you should figure out if that's something you care about. The
Sure.
next thing, which I think is more important, is how do I measure if this is helping me, and how am I measuring if this is going to be something that's again U curve a sweet spot net positive for me, because if you're just taking things willy-nilly, you can elicit a biological response that you didn't want that's going to then be something that you're going to be, it's like whack-a-mole. Like, I thought I was doing this, but really I just exacerbated something that was already normal. And now I've got this problem. And now I got to hit that whack-a-mole with something else. And then you start down, peptide fatigue and dumping all sorts of random stuff in trying to figure out all these endocrine system problems that you just created in your body. Um, so that's why I don't like where the conversation has gone to just general advice.
Mm.
They're not supplements, and again, I'm passionate about supplements too in the same categories, because it's not just peeing it out. Sometimes you are actually doing a net negative that's harming your organs, your
Mm.
kidneys, your liver, your brain, your cardiovascular system. If you're taking too much of something that's not beneficial to you and you can't measure that either. So again, I would say, my best advice for people is one, work with a competent team that's going to take your health seriously. Make sure that the tools, because they're amazing tools, make sure the tools are coming from a place that are sourced, that are for human use and with medical oversight,
Mm.
making sure there's no impurities and things like that, that there's actual through the supply chain to the prescribing physician, that there's oversight in there. And then the last thing is making sure that your clinician is competent enough to have conversations and answer your questions, but also explain, hey, we want to recommend this peptide because of the situations that we're observing. We're also going to measure that, and we're going to check for some things. So those are the three kind of major components of it.
All that makes a ton of sense. It kind of sounds like even these, TRT clinics are quickly becoming more insurance based, right? Where it's like, okay, your testosterone's low, boom, 200 milligrams a week or whatever, right? It's like that's just like the status, the standard dosage. It's like everybody's just kind of put on this cookie cutter hormone replacement protocol. And I think initially they meant well, right? And
Big time.
they're just trying to solve an issue that is pretty debilitating for a lot of guys and women too, for that matter. But now it's become a race to the bottom of like, all right, how cheap can we get
Yep.
peptides and hormones? And it's like anything that's in the Western Hemisphere of capitalism. It's
Yeah.
like it all turns into a money grab. Anyway, I say all that to say what you said makes a lot of sense, and it's not just about, all right, let me get my blood work, let me make sure my cholesterol is not high. Yes, we want to know where we are status wise, but we want to be able to predict what's going to potentially happen, what's coming around the corner, why and how we got here, what we can do to prevent long term issues that are potentially going to wreck me specifically.
Yep.
not whatever the general public or the, the general group of 40-year-old guys, are at risk for. It's like, what am I at risk for? So I guess the next
100%.
question is, how do you do this? Right? Like what
Yeah.
are, because we started going through the process, like full disclosure, we're going, me and my wife, Michelle, we're going through the process. We're establishing baselines. Like we're doing all the testing, and it's very thorough. Right. So it's like, it's more thorough than anything I've ever like encountered, like it's probably quadruple the amount of things I've ever done. So it's clearly checking all the boxes, but I want to know what and why you have these protocol. Like what are the protocol, what are the testing procedures? Why are you testing for them? And what is like the general approach you guys take to make sure that all these bases are covered?
Yeah, great question. And part of it, I'll answer as much as I can. Part of this is IP, right? We want to protect
Sure.
ourselves. We're innovators for a reason. We feel like we're leading the whole movement on this the right way, and so the part of it we want to protect. But framework wise, the human physiology, we want to tap into the things that are clinically relevant, and we want to tap into the things that are in the status of what would be called emerging technology. So there's emerging technology and insights and categories that are, if you compare them to things that are clinically valid, are good reflections of the right thing. So we lean on the fence of we want to stay innovative, but grounded in clinical science.
Mm.
So, for instance, when we talk about genomics, we want to make sure that there's an understanding of how much of this category of conversation we're talking about in the gene structure or a certain part of what category. It could be cardiovascular category of genomics, for example. We want to make sure that there's a power ratio in one, the clinical efficacy, like the consensus, but also the output of what that means for you. And we're honest about that. I think that's part of the thing too that's really, really important, is that science is ever evolving, and some of it we need to push the limits, but some of it has gotten pushed so far that people are rubbing like urine on themselves, saying it's like a miracle kind
Mm.
of thing, right? So there's two sides of that coin. Is like, we don't want to just a bunch of random people doing stuff because they just saw it, right? Um, and the things when it gets to that power ratio of like not being clinical, enough consensus clinical information, and the power output of like what this will yield for you, we rank those things lower on purpose, because with integrity we can't say there's enough science to validate that we feel like this is moving in this direction, but we can't validate it fully. So therefore, this is somewhat, quote unquote, if you will, experimental, right?
Mm.
And so there has to be that honest conversation with it. But science is ever emerging. So, your question of like, how do we put this together? We have a proprietary way, but what we're trying to look at, again, are these leading, lagging, and current indications, and the technology that's the best in those categories. So when we combine it into a comprehensive look, you're really reflecting back what I call the true physiological mirror. What people are getting stuck in with blood work is, hey, when I take blood sampling, I have a reflection of how my health is. And you talked about just kind of where we are as in the capitalistic kind of nature of things. That's what's been pushed. I actually had an honest conversation. I won't say his name or the company, by the way, but there's a company right now that's really popular in functional testing. They do a deep panel. They push it once a year, though. This is the problem with this. If you do once a year testing, it is because you brought this up. It's fallen into this kind of insurance kind of situation. If you go to your primary care physician, how many times do they do a physical for you? It's been inundated with us once a year, right? Here's what's crazy, and most people don't even understand this. Almost 70 plus, I'll be safe with this number, 70 plus of biological process change happens under 90 days.
Mm.
So if our bodies are processing biologically changes under 90 days, almost, whole physiology that we can see through blood work, um, why the hell are we waiting 364 days to do our next blood panel?
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
No sense.
Rationally, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The other part of this, in this conversation I had today, this honest conversation with a physician that I respect, and we were talking about because I actually did a rant on this on Instagram, is right now the big kind of biohacker push is this biological age conversation. What is my biological age? This indication of how my habits, my lifestyle are going to lead to my life longevity. What is my biological age? If you see anybody touting numbers that are like 10 years younger, 12, 15 years younger, they're getting it more than likely from an algorithmic calculation from blood work that one is probably not comprehensive enough. But even if it is a comprehensive panel, it's an algorithm that's guesstimating with a real number accuracy that's more than likely under 65%. If I'm throwing out my personal opinion, I'm safe with that number. But I'm throwing out my personal opinion, it's probably closer to about 50% accurate. So you get all these people that are just like, I kind of made a joke, like I've seen these weird kind of communities of like hot girl summer, like I'm my 20-year-old self, I'm 19 again because I took this one panel, which once a year I just took this one panel, and now I'm gonna go have mimosas and like because I'm 19, right, and I can go do the same things as I'm 19. This has been a biohacker hijacked capitalistic thing that has pushed out information that's good, but hijacked it to push the clinical relevancy of something that's 60% effective. And so the physician that we were talking about who works for said company was like, this is the hardest thing. I have to tell every patient, like, don't take this take this with a grain of salt, like, kind of thing. Otherwise but the problem is, this is just like, what I was talking about before with the peptides, is people just run with this stuff. So again, we partner with the best in the world doing certain things. It's not perfect, but our accuracy rating on some of the things that we're touting is in the 97 percentile of accuracy. So when we talk about certain processes of estimating problems, right? Your blood work says this, Josiah, dude, look at your blood work. You look amazing, brother. Like, holy cow, blah, blah. And we haven't seen any of these things yet, by the way. So this is just a hypothetical.
Why?
But I'm anticipating it. You look great here. Here are the things that we're going to pay attention to right this second, blah, 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 right? Categorizing all this thing. Again, we're doing a deep panel up to about 125 when it's all said and done. Biomarkers, we do about 80 pages of reporting just for your blood work. You'll see all this. We'll go through all this again. But yeah, great conversation. But then when we start layering the things that we're not seeing through that avenue and saying, okay, right this second, you look great, but here's what the last 5 years of habits have done. Here's some trending data that we really need to pay attention to. Because right now might be great, but if you use that and say, oh, sweet, hot girl summer, I'm going to go do mimosas every weekend now because I'm safe, I'm healthy, all these things. But there's some major problematic areas combined with some genetic things that we'll understand. A big one, Chris Hemsworth, because again, Chris Hemsworth went and did with Peter Attia, there's a big Netflix documentary on this.
Yeah.
Peter brought up something that's, neurodegenerative disease is something close to my heart. So my grandfather died of Alzheimer's. We have parts of these genome structures, but the APOE4 gene, APOE4, that gene is a predominant indicator of Alzheimer risk. And when Chris found out that he had that, it was a wake-up call for him and in conversation with Peter, because now on the U curve, again, inserting ourselves in an assurance-based healthcare, right? Now he knows I can't act hot girl summer for certain things because I'll throw myself, on certain edges of the net negative of this. So now he knows I need to stay away, lifestyle factors, these things. There's other pharmaceuticals that are indicated that can help. There's some, I don't know what his protocol looks like at all. So I'm hypothetically talking here. I don't want to defame him or anything. But he's probably doing things that are, have some good clinical relevancy, and he might be experimenting too with the things that we're not unsure of yet. My point into this is I know my ApoE structure too. I have ApoE3, less likely, but is part of the indication for neurodegeneration. Combine that with other indications for me. I know that even if my blood work looks great for these 3 months, even worse if I did it once a year, and just for 364 other days was just, for me specifically, it was just like hammering tequila every weekend. Had shredded abs, looked great, all these things, but hammered tequila every single weekend, knowing my situation for cardiovascular function and the gene structures that I have for neurodegenerative disease, I'd be throwing gasoline on that situation.
Mm,
And that's the assurance model that we take with people at Elevation is we start going, okay, what are the things that you need to do to assure you're an active participant in the problematic areas that we're seeing from leading, lagging, and real-time indications
mm,
that are causing problems for you. Maybe there's some things right now that we have to course correct right this second for the next 3 months. Maybe there are things that for the last 5 years we got to really now course correct and emphasize this is a problem. So your protocol is going to change not only from a lifestyle factor of it, but also from protocols that we'll build. And then there's things that are like, hey, and this is an honest conversation. We don't have enough clinical science today to say we can actually reverse the process of this organ itself to heal.
mm,
One example of this, really good one that, in the bodybuilding communities that are pumping out this advice of taking all these things, right, is your kidneys. Your kidneys are an organ system that helps in the detoxification of the human body. Part of that is if you harm the kidneys to an extent, they can't come back from that. The
mm,
liver, on the other hand, can heal and regenerate in many different ways. But if your kidneys get so far damaged, we don't have enough clinical efficacy to say, or any type of pharmaceutical agent or something like that to say, hey, Josiah, we're going to give you this protocol and your kidney is going to completely regenerate to like when you were 20. We don't have that. That's why kidney transplants are so prevalent in this country. And it's
mm,
also why dialysis has gotten so big and it's such a big money, growth segment of medicine is because people's kidneys aren't functioning, right?
wow.
So
Mm,
when we talk about this, we're honest also in these categories. So you could say my blood works great right this second, but if you're doing things that we're like, hey, long term though, we're catching some things that's harming your kidneys for the last 6 years, kind of thing.
yeah.
You're more inclined in this assurance model to go, hold the phone. My blood work looks great, but all that's telling me is I'm doing the right job for these last 3 months.
Mm,
Now let's keep measuring that over and over and over again, and then coincide that with lagging trending information that's indicating long-term situations for certain organ function. So that's just one real-time example where some organs you're going to have a hard time restarting.
mm,
Other ones, if you catch them earlier, you can regenerate. You can, if we, you know, if you fatty liver disease is a great one. Some people that are alcoholics, have fatty liver disease, and some people who have never touched a sip of alcohol have fatty liver disease. And those are things that you can work around and help people with to regenerate organ systems to then eliminate that and set them up for future success, not only for the next year or 2 years, but also identifying it early so then they're not having to deal with those problems when they're 60 years old or things like that when life extension is going to be a problem. So that
mm,
was a really long-winded way, but we have proprietary ways that we're looking at things, but we're really trying to pay attention again to this comprehensive mirror of your physiology, where are your problems, where, and knowing from these angles they're coming from, so that we can put it all together and have you really focused on the things that are going to yield the biggest return for you, just like an F1 race car.
mm. And it sounds like, I mean, one of the big differences that you guys seem to be leading the charge on is a more frequent check-in, right? Like, because a lot of even like TRT clinics that we've worked with, and some great people. It's just a lot of times they're doing blood work and they're doing even like just a check-in every 6 to 8 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, sounds like you guys are like a quarterly. Hey, let's. This is going to become more of an ongoing, process where you're not just looking at a snapshot once a year, twice a year. This is something where it's going to become normal to take stock and inventory of what's going on and what has been going on and what could come down the road with more frequent testing.
Correct, and there's reasons for that. Um, TRT companies are reacting to human behavior. People don't want to do this regularly. They don't.
No, nobody wants to get blood regularly.
They
I prick my finger. I'm like, I want to do this for a while.
They don't want to do that. But if you, and that's because it's uncomfortable to do
Sure.
something that regular. So they've accommodated that. It's easier to say, hold up, we just need this is the bare minimum we need to do.
Mm,
And we'll default back to human nature because you don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. So let's just find this happy medium where, FDA says that's okay. I can give you TRT. We got to check it at least these many times because this is what the FDA says.
sure.
And let's just do that. And what we've just described from human nature is exactly what the insurance model has become. And I mean that with all due respect. I have plenty of people I talk to regularly. I really respect these guys. I would consider them friends. I hope they still consider me friends after this podcast. But they're smart people,
Yeah.
very smart people, and they do strong intentional work. What we believe, though, is that we will lead the charge on education, and it's going to take a longer time. I know that, but it's why we partner with people like yourselves that are leading communities that actually care about their health. It makes sense for us because people, when they get educated and get motivated on the whys and the understanding of it, they're going to be more inclined to do it. And when
Yeah.
they can see the power in it, they're going to continuously want to do it over and over again. It's literally why on my social media for the last 4 years, I show myself, I show results of what I'm doing. I show intrinsic results at times of what I'm doing throughout the year so that people can understand that I'm not a charlatan, just like, hey, do blood work and use my ambassador code for whatever. That I actually live and preach what I do over and over again. Like I live our elite system that you are going to participate in. Because with blood work specifically, the debate again, and I brought this up, is the pushback on my stance is that why would you bring up why if there are some elements in the biomarkers that can be either a false reading, like a false positive or something, or some influx in the reading and whatnot, why would you want to have a person have unnecessary anxiety of something? Why would you want that? And I understand and I empathize with that situation. But that person is coming from a standpoint, from a structure that they've already inherently believed in themselves as a clinician, that once a year testing is sufficient because their framework is in this insurance based framework, not
Mm,
assurance based. I'm of the mindset, and we are of the mindset at our company that even if there is a false positive, there's nuance. We are setting up our patients with this nuance too. Hey, this might not be accurate,
mm,
but here's what we're going to do. Especially if you're with us for 3 years, right?
sure.
Every 3 months for 3 years, you're now going to have measurable data. So if that was an anomaly, next 3 months, we should know that that's an anomaly in that particular category.
Mm,
But what if it's not an anomaly? This is my stance. What if that's not an anomaly? What if that's a trend? And what if we caught it at 6 months uh, rather than 4 years, 6 months too late instead of 4 years too late?
sure.
That's what I give a shit about. And so I'd rather live on that side of the fence, honestly, and have to have the nuanced conversations with, not me, but our clinicians have the nuanced conversations with our patients and have them rest assured, then go, why would I just, unnecessary anxiety? Why would I want that for my patients? I'm only going to test the necessary stuff that the machine wants us to. And it's sufficient because if we see something wrong there, then we'll know. The problem in that argument itself, and if you've listened, Peter T has done a phenomenal job with this specifically, is for years, primary care or general lab work, even TRT companies, we're just doing for cardiovascular blood work. From a cholesterol standpoint, for years, we're just looking at LDL, HDL, and total cholesterol ratios. And that was kind of their gist of the whole thing. Now you had Peter Attia leading a charge, and a lot of people, even cardiovascular physicians, are talking about this more and more. He led the charge in the ApoB screening. So now you've got this new biomarker that's become more understood by people. And people are now after all this time and him leading this charge and the conversations happening, going, you know what, we should probably add ApoB into our cardiovascular panels. So who was right? You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things. And so I'd rather live in what I feel like at the end of this, I'll be validated on, uh, and be respected for, taking this stance with our company. And I'd rather live on this side of the fence. It's the same reason why we do cancer screenings too. This is something we haven't gotten to you yet, but we do once a year cancer screenings, and the efficacy of it from the ages 30 plus, it's kind of like a hockey stick. But when you get into your 50 years old, the efficacy of it goes up higher and higher. So, but if you start it early, you can understand and catch things way earlier than typical screenings. So it's not eliminating screenings, but it helps people catch things. So when we see certain things and we have a indication of something and we combine it with other screenings that we're doing, we then can triage you to the right, situations. And being completely honest, we don't have all the solutions if we do catch things, but we will triage you out to the right people that can help you. This was my sole mission when I was sitting there having these conversations with oncologists, going, looking at my mother who's wearing these freeze caps on her head, trying to keep her hair. She caught her cancer literally by a miracle of God in a conversation with her oncologist. But I know many of women that have caught it too late. And this isn't just specifically about breast cancer. This is just anything, man. Is if we can arm people with them now inserted into their assurance equation of healthcare with the right tools to catch things earlier, you're going to be more in charge of your legacy, your family, your business, you're going to show up better because you're going to know more things than if you just did the bare minimum. And that's really what it comes down to, is we didn't want to do the bare minimum. And we were, I was kind of over the like cheap stuff, the
Yeah.
cheap kind of shenanigan stuff and the basic stuff. And I wanted to be a part of the movement that was going to take assurance-based healthcare to that next level.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we heard about guys and girls having things pop up out of nowhere, right? And they're like, "Oh, he was perfectly healthy, like everything's fine." And it's like, "Well, yeah, because you're defining perfectly healthy by just the general standards that have been put out by general medicine and insurance." So, you get tested once. I mean, I know guys who are fit, healthy, jacked, all the stuff, they're doing a little bit of the bad stuff, right? But like they're not a walking heart attack or anything. They look, like, okay, he's good. But then boom, something happens. Like, oh, I found a cancer cell, or I got, I had a stroke, or I had a heart attack, like all these things. And you're like, how that happened? Well, it's probably because you
Yeah.
just didn't catch it. Like you could have caught something. It's always the answer on the hindsight's always,
Hindsight,
oh, well,
yeah.
if you would have, just done this, we probably would have caught it. So I look at it as like, I don't think our environment's getting any healthier.
No.
Um, it's if anything getting less healthy.
Yes.
So I think the argument for more frequent check-ins with something that is the most important thing, like there's nothing more valuable than the body you live in. So it makes total sense to me, right? I mean, just playing that game of like, this is just what I do. Like, this is the identity stuff you talk about. Like, hey, I just am so serious about taking care of myself that every quarter I check the box, to make sure that I'm not going down the wrong path. I'm still on the right path, and there's nothing coming around the corner that I'm not going to foresee.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. No one's perfect. That's my whole point. But you want to be on the forefront of what you can that's available. And that's what we're leading. Everything that's on the forefront, we're leading in that category. We don't have all the answers and nothing's perfect, but you just hit something, a topic that is extremely valuable for people to understand too. Reference ranges are based off of general populations. That's a scary thing to really break down.
Mm.
So general populations, if we're being honest, how many people live in the United States that are adults? You know, our current population state that is categorized as metabolically problematic is way more than half. So we have reference ranges for half the population. I would argue, I mean, it could be up to almost 70% of the adult population is technically not healthy.
Sure.
Probably more than that. I don't have the exact statistic in front of me, But with that knowledge, okay, if we're creating reference ranges on already a majority that's unhealthy, that's like me going, I want to play in the NBA finals against Kobe, but I'm going to go play with my, I'm going to go play basketball and practice with my friend around the corner who's a 300 pound 5'9" guy. You know what I mean? The, like
It makes no sense. Yeah.
the measurement of my basketball skill from me dunking on this dude all over, over and over again is not really strong measurement statistically if I could compete against Kobe in game 4 of the NBA finals,
Sure.
right? And
Yeah.
that's really what we're talking about with these reference ranges. And so it's a good point, when we talk about our ranges with people too, we're talking about optimality. So you
Mhm.
have reference ranges where problems are insurance, but also what's assurance? Like we want to, what's that tight window where we're aiming like goals? You might not hit it, and that's okay, but we're shooting for optimality as much as we can in everything that we can possibly see. That's the point. So you got to get away from that model and into the assurance model and know how that works to even play in that game. And that's what
Yeah.
we help people do.
That makes so much sense. Like I love it, right? Because I mean, there's always been, at least for me, a sixth sense around like just how general health practices work right now. I've been through things myself, but I've been through things with my wife, like that have been really stressful from a health perspective, and
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing how problematic the industry is when you actually have a real problem, how hard it can be to find answers, right?
Oh, dude.
It's incredible. You're like even little things like I've been dealing with this thing. It's silly, but it's like I have bad allergies, right? I get terrible allergies in the springtime. It sucks, whatever. But this time around, it's like my ears are popping all the time, right? So my
Mm-hmm.
sinuses are completely like clogged, and I have to take like this whole list of allergy stuff like that. It's really bad, and it doesn't like cure it. It's just like this thing. But I've gone to like my general doctor, who I never see because like I go through you guys now, and I go through another. I've been going through another doctor, whatever. I go to her
Mm-hmm.
because she's just the local person.
Yeah.
Um, no real answers. Went to you know ENT or whatever to see if they could help. No real answers. And then the ENT was like, "Hey, you have a deviated septum, right?" And I was like, "No, I've never been told that. Like I'm
Yeah.
40 years old. No one's ever told me I have a deviated septum." And she's
Yeah.
like, "Well, like yeah, you do." And I'm like, "Okay, like that, cool. All right. So what do I do with that
Yeah.
information? No idea. All right. So there's all these like people who I'm not knocking them at all. It's just like, and that's a minor issue in comparison to what a lot of people are dealing with, right? Where they can't get answers. But I would argue the biggest problem, and and we can kind of wrap up with this, but I think the biggest problem is a belief that our health is not our responsibility,
Mm. Whew.
right? Because
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's really, if you really boil it down, we've been conditioned to believe that the protocols, the scheduling of physicals, and just the general way that everybody takes care of their health is somehow designed to serve us. And that if we just do all that and whatever, and we try to eat better and work out a little bit, whatever, like our health is somehow going to be taken care of by these professionals, right? And I think we're at the beginning stages, and maybe we're further down the road than I think, but I think we're definitely in the early stages of understanding that our health is actually our responsibility. And that because of the internet, because of technology, because of whatever you want to say, we're now able to access better experts, better testing, more consistent testing, more frequent testing, so that we can actually figure out what does it mean to control my health? What does it mean to take ownership of my health? We're redefining what that looks like. And this is just the early stages of that, right? And I think that's really the bottom line is we
Yeah.
have to wake up and go, you know what? My health is my responsibility. It's not my family doctor who I see once a year, if that. Sometimes people are like I talk to guys and they know because they're probably listening. They're like, yeah, I haven't been to my doctor in 3 years. And I'm like, you're 50 years old. What are you doing? Like, what is going on? Right. And it's because
Yeah.
those doctors aren't really providing any value. Here's your cholesterol. Okay, cool. Your blood pressure. Yay. See you later. Right. And so it's like there's a distrust of the medical world too because of all the nonsense of the past 4 years. Right. Like, and probably even before that, misleading information, whatever. So it's like we're at the cusp of taking back responsibility and ownership of our health. Right. And understanding the game of like being healthy should not be put in the cheap basket,
No.
right? Like save that for like, I don't know, whatever, like maybe clothes or something. I don't know, like,
Yeah.
whatever. Right. But
Yeah.
taking care of health is an investment in yourself. And there's no way to do it in a cheap, at least not the right way. There's no like right way to do it the cheap way. It's going
Yes.
to come down to a time and attention and financial investment in your health. Right. And I think that's where you guys are leading the charge. But I think that's like the mindset that has to start shifting.
Oh, there's no better way to end it. The accountability part. I mean, I love that. And that's what we're trying to empower people to lead the charge. Part of what you're saying is taking back that ownership, and into really understanding and accepting assurance-based healthcare is me assuring myself through proactive engagement, inserting myself into the equation and owning that. And the first step is it can be really overwhelming because then you're hearing a lot of voices. And so hopefully you hear those type of, if you're someone who's never heard it before and starting to believe it, hopefully you're around, people like yourselves that can help them through that in the true transformation. But also it's what we do too. It's why we want to take people. It's why we have different memberships, honestly. It's why our foundational level is not mislabeled. It's called foundations for a reason, because foundationally blood work should be something everyone should be doing at the regularity that we're talking about. And so it's taking those steps into full assurity as much as you can into your health and ownership of that. And granted, we don't have all of the complete answers, but by hell, we have a lot of them and the avenues that should help someone be proactive and very active into their assurance that they're doing the right things. So such a good way to end, is with that, really empowering people to take ownership. The investment in your health, it blows my mind watching some men, especially, who get to the end of their, capital goals, and they have all these financial things that they've dreamed of, and they look terrible. And
Mm,
I mean no disrespect in like just the aesthetics, but literally they look like they've killed themselves to get there,
yeah,
right? And then how long do you even get to enjoy the day to day of that, or enjoy the longevity with it, and with the people that you thought you were doing this for, kind of thing. And it's a paradigm shift that, I'm with you, man. Like the number one investment so that you can show up for other people is yourself. And part of that equation to invest in yourself is your own health. And the
mm,
only way that you can really do it well is if you are an active participant in it.
mm,
And insurance, I will make the comment though, so many people, and I still have so many friends, I'm thankful they're in the insurance model doing the things that they're doing. If something terrible happens, I want some of these people to be the ones taking care of me. And
sure,
so I don't ever bash them, because those physicians are incredible. What I do bash is what the position they've been forced into
sure.
because of this system and this equation, that's been built around the insurance model, and uh, some of the evil participants in it, which would be a whole other
Yeah,
podcast.
no, you're right. It's not that we don't hate the players, we hate the game, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. Is same here. Like I have clients who are incredible physicians. They might even listen to this, who are brilliant people, like
Hmm.
literally surgeons, doctors, people who run
Yeah.
practices. I have a couple up in Canada who run an incredible rural health practice in Canada. They're doing amazing things. But they will admit, like, yes, the system especially in America, is really busted, right? So I think it's, once again, it comes back to, managing your health team. You have to
Yes.
stop being a bench player who kind of gets subbed in sometimes into the health game, and it's like, oh, it's my turn to go play for a day.
Yeah.
You have to remove yourself of that and become the owner of the team,
There
right?
you go.
Like, okay, I'm not even a player anymore. Like, I'm literally the CEO of my health. I
Yeah.
need this doctor for this. I need this team for the majority of my health. And then, occasionally, like, yeah, all right, I go out and do something crazy, run a Spartan, tear my bicep like I did. Yeah, I want to get surgeon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to repair my
Right.
arm and make it look normal again.
Yeah.
But that's the CEO mentality that we got to have with our health. So
Amen.
real quick to wrap up, man, what's the best way for people? I know obviously if you're a client, you're listening to this podcast, you're going to hear a lot more from Elevation and Brad and all the things that we're doing together. There's a huge amount of stuff coming your way. But in the meantime, if you're just listening to the podcast, what is the best way for people to connect with you and with Elevation?
Yeah, so you can see us on our website, www.elevation.com. It's spelled with an E, so it's Elevetion. So it's a nuance of the word elevate, which is a French word. So you can catch us there. You can find me on Instagram, Brad_Clifford, and then Elevation Health, spelled the same way, Elevetion Health, is our Instagram handle as well. Same thing for Facebook. So you can find us on social media. But I really encourage people that are listening to this. The reason why we partner with, partners like the True Transformation is the collaboration, and that's when you're going to get the best CEO version of your executive health solution is in the combination.
Epic, man. Well, dude, I'm super pumped to work with you both as a client and as a partner. It's been a long time coming, but we're definitely excited. We've already had some of our clients engage with you guys,
Yeah.
and I know there'll be plenty more with a lot of things we have planned. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun year, and a fun future, where our clients will continue to get access to the best, and the partners that we bring in, who we believe in the philosophies and the values you guys have. I'll make sure all the links that you mentioned are in the show notes. And if
Yeah.
you're listening to this, make sure at a bare minimum just to connect, and start getting more access to what Brad puts out. You do put out a lot of like behind the scenes stuff, which is awesome. But man, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to the next one.
Appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me.
Of course.